Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today we're going to be unpacking Cisco Systems, ticker symbol CSCO, and we're going to be using a bunch of recent analyses that you've actually given to us. And our goal here is to kind of extract the key insights to help all of you understand what's happening with this major tech player. We've got a ton of information, and we've got stuff covering Cisco's business, its current stock performance, important financial metrics, emerging trends, and even some technical analysis.
Right.
All this should give you a really well-rounded picture of this company.
I think what's so interesting about this is that we've got so much information about a company like this. It really gives us a chance to look at it from a lot of different angles.
I agree. So why don't we start with just a general understanding of Cisco for folks that maybe aren't as familiar as some of the other listeners. So Cisco is a significant multinational company focused on digital communications technology. Their headquarters is City in San Jose, California.
Right.
And they're kind of a top player. They're the top global provider of networking equipment. And they hold substantial market share in a bunch of different areas, like switching software, SD-WAN. You know, you'll see their name associated with all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Networking hardware, software, telecommunications equipment, high-tech services. They've also got a really strong presence in areas like the Internet of Things.
Right.
Domain security, video conferencing, all sorts of things.
If we kind of connect this back to the bigger picture, I think, one thing to really think about is how much of modern business relies on the infrastructure that companies like Cisco provide. Any kind of shifts in their strategy or their performance can kind of tell us a lot about broader technology adoption trends that we're seeing. For example, their push into IoT. That could really signal where they see the future growth in enterprise technology going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about kind of who they are as a company, but what about the stock itself? What have we seen recently? Recent data that we've got indicates the price has been kind of fluctuating around 62, 64.87 with one data point that we saw. Mentioned it was at 60.89 on March 17th of this year, 2025. And looking back over the past year, the 52-week range has been from 44.50 up to 66.50. So you can see that, it's fluctuated within that range. But what's interesting is there's some mention of mixed market sentiment. And that may be the stock is trading at a little bit of a premium compared to its fair value. So that would suggest potential overvaluation. However, in the very, very short term, there was an increase in the stock price just in the last 24 hours.
This kind of brings up a really interesting point, I think, of how the market perceives a company versus, what some might consider to be its intrinsic worth or its fair value. When you see a stock trading at a premium, to its fair value, it could suggest that investors have pretty high expectations for its future performance, even if the current fundamentals don't necessarily fully justify that price. And then you throw on top of that, this recent uptick. Is it a short-term reaction to something, or is it the beginning of a new trend?
Yeah, and that's always the question, right? Is it a blip or is it a trend? Well, why don't we take a look at some of the key financial numbers that we were able to extract from these analyses for the price-to-earnings ratio is around 18.07, which is actually noted as being a little bit lower than some competitors, like Palo Alto Networks, ticker symbol PANTINE-W, and Fortinet, ticker symbol FTNT, and for those folks who are listening.
And are interested in income from their investments. Cisco offers a trailing dividend yield of 2.47%.
Yeah, and a forward yield of 2.53%. And we even saw another source saying that the forward yield is more like 2.69%. So, take that for what it's worth, but it's around 2.5%, give or take. And finally, the company's market capitalization is about $258.36 billion. So that classifies it as a large cap stock.
So I think what's really interesting here is that lower price to earnings ratio. Compared to these other companies, especially those that are kind of focused in the cybersecurity space. And often that indicates that the market might be seeing Cisco as a more mature company, a more stable company, with maybe a little less explosive growth potential compared to some of these companies in higher growth sectors. However, that consistent dividend yield becomes quite attractive for a lot of investors who are looking to get regular income from their investments. It's a different kind of profile than, say, a high-flying growth stock, a bird in the hand, so to speak. Okay, so let's move on and talk about some of the interesting patterns or trends that we should be aware of. The technical analysis suggests a potential consolidation pattern that could end up being followed by a bearish trend reversal, indicating a possible short-term downturn. So that's something to keep an eye on. But another thing to consider is that Cisco's core markets are actually facing limited growth, which is pushing them to look at expanding into some of these newer areas for future growth. And on a more positive note, the ongoing shift towards remote work and digital transformation could really increase the demand for Cisco's networking and collaboration solutions like Webex, for instance. I think this is a good point about the strategic crossroads that Cisco is at. On the one hand, they benefit from these major shifts towards digital operations, and that drives demand for their existing products. But they also recognize that their traditional strongholds may not offer the same growth in the future. And I think this potential bearish reversal that the technical analysis is pointing to suggests that maybe the market is a bit uncertain about how this transition is going to play out, at least in the short term.
Absolutely. So continuing with the technical analysis a little bit, beyond that price range that we talked about, the average trading volume for Cisco stock is about 20.1 million shares. But recent volume has been way lower. It's only been around 5.97 million shares. So that lower volume could actually suggest that there's just less market interest recently. Now, we don't have the specific numbers for the moving averages, but the relationship between short-term moving averages, like the 50-day moving average, and long-term moving averages, like the 200-day moving average, can really signal bullish or bearish trends. Similarly, the relative strength index. While we don't have the exact number for that either, is a key indicator to watch to see if the stock is overbought or oversold.
Right.
The overall conclusion from the technical analysis is that it seems like the stock is in a consolidative phase right now with mixed signals and a lack of strong volume support, which warrants caution.
Yeah, that dip in trading volume is a really interesting signal. It could mean that investors are just kind of holding their positions, waiting for more clarity on the company's direction, or waiting for some bigger market catalysts. When a stock is in a consolidation phase, like the analysis suggests, it often means that the price isn't making any, significant moves in either direction. And this lower volume can kind of be characteristic of that, indecision in the market. And so how it breaks out of this consolidation, whichever way it goes, could be pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure. So with all this information, what does this all mean for investment opportunities? For folks that are maybe longer-term investors and are seeking some stable returns, Cisco's really strong market position and its dividend yield could make it very attractive.
Right.
It also might be a good option for diversification, especially if they succeed in expanding into these new markets. Now, if you're a short-term trader, you might want to try to capitalize on some of these price fluctuations, but that obviously requires very careful monitoring. Currently, the recommendation from one of the analyses that we saw is to hold existing positions, given all these mixed signals and the valuation being a little bit high. So it's suggesting that investors should monitor some of these key indicators before making any new moves.
So I think that hold recommendation really kind of reflects this current uncertainty. For someone that's looking for steady income, a well-established player. Cisco definitely has its merits. But the key for future appreciation, I think, really lies in their ability to tap into these new growth areas successfully. And investors with a shorter time horizon need to be particularly aware of that, the potential for a short-term downturn. That was flagged by the technical analysis.
Yeah, it seems like the next 6 to 12 months are going to be pretty telling. One final thought is that keeping an eye on Cisco's ability to adapt to these new technologies and the market shifts is going to be crucial for their future success. Their stock price will likely continue to be influenced by their financial performance, of course, broader market trends, and their strategic business decisions, including any technological advancements or acquisitions that they make.
This really kind of underscores that. Even dominant players in a sector like technology can't afford to stand still. Continuous innovation, willingness to evolve their business model, these things are essential if you want to maintain long-term relevance and also to see long-term performance in your stock price. And so I think it'll be really telling to watch their investments in research and development and any moves that they make to acquire new technologies.
I think that's a great point. So let's recap quickly what we talked about today. Cisco is clearly a dominant force when it comes to networking, but they're facing some growth challenges in their core areas. They do offer a very steady dividend, but the stock price shows some uncertainty And there's a potential for short-term downturns, which were indicated by the technical analysis. Move towards remote work could be really good for them. But investors should watch very carefully and see if they're able to expand successfully into these new markets. What stands out to you most from this whole overview? It's a very complex picture. It's balancing stability with the need for future growth.
Well, I think what I would say is, what's really important for folks to consider is that Cisco has this established position. That gives them a really strong foundation to build upon. But their future returns are likely going to hinge on how successfully they're able to navigate these evolving technological landscapes. It's a story of potential transition, I think, more than just steady state.
Right. And with that, we want to encourage all of you to do your own further investigation based on the insights that we've discussed here today. Please subscribe, like, and comment if you found this analysis helpful. Until next time, happy investing.